Hi there everyone, welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawwalker, your host, and today we are going to be checking out this new album from Arcade Fire, We. I'm not really sure how to put all of my thoughts into words for this album. The whole thing is kind of presented in such a passive way. There's little to no commitment to anything that could be considered compelling on this album. Really, the instrumentals here at the very least are not bad, and usually are actually pretty decent, but as soon as they start to do something somewhat interesting, they either shift back to something you would hear in like a car commercial, or the lyrics come in and remind you of how there's really no room for depth or subtlety in anything here. All of the songs here on the lyrical side of things are emotional music for people with a 4th grade vocabulary. I mean, on the first 2 tracks of this album, Age of Anxiety Parts 1 and 2 respectively, pretty okay tracks. There are moments that are well put together, but the main narrative that this album takes starts here and follows through the whole album with a very bland transition from I to we as a concept. And that's kind of it. It's like a study on becoming less self-centered and more in touch with the world around you. And really just kind of feels like a desperate ploy to just kind of have some kind of like marketable, like, this album is about becoming like less of a prick. And I mean, that's fine, you know, I think it's a good healthy message, thumbs up. But the whole album is like really ham-fisted on the writing side of things and unintentionally like kind of preachy. Anyway, the parts of this album that are consistently pretty decent are pretty much all of the instrumentals, and that's kind of it. The whole arc through the end of the Empire genuinely sounds like an attempt to kind of touch on some kind of like Pink Floyd, The Wall era sounds, or maybe like a little bit of like the John Lennon Imagine type stuff. And it just ends up feeling like it's treating the listener like an idiot. It's taking these like really clear and painfully obvious themes and very low-hanging fruit current events and just very non-hard to grasp like concepts and topics, and shitting out a fairly easy to digest musical paste that kind of makes me sick. And it just seems increasingly apparent that Arcade Fire are well over the hill at this point. I mean, Reflector really was the beginning of the end. I feel like this is kind of the problem with most of these indie pop groups. They kind of either resort to stomp, clap, hey-core, or they kind of slowly start cannibalizing all of their influences and begin recycling older ideas, usually also involving the stomp, clap, hey stuff. Or I guess in this case, they kind of went for the least subtle writing topics you could possibly think of. And I also don't really understand the need here for these like multi-part tracks either. I know that Arcade Fire are not strangers to these multi-part songs, but the way that these songs are like split is generally just like very unnecessary. In the case of like the track The Empire, or The Fall of the Empire 4, it probably should have just been scrapped entirely. I mean, this song is just so canned. I mean, it's like this is an exhibit for not understanding nuance at all. I kind of can't believe the lack of awareness that, you know, went into the writing for this song. Like, what they brought to the table is just like a complete lack of understanding of the world. I mean, the lyrics alone, ugh. The Lightning One starts with a pretty cool acoustic guitar that kind of reminds me of the intro for like Joy Division's Love Will Tear Us Apart, but instead of going somewhere like that song does, this track kind of slows down and stands on top of a mighty dirt mound and produces some of the most bland modern pop lyricism I've ever heard. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really have a lot of hope for this album, but I thought maybe we would be in like a slightly better sonic territory than like a fucking Imagine Dragons track. And at the very least, The Lightning Part 2 is a bit more of like an up-tempo track, but it really doesn't end up helping very much. This is the music for a Kroger ad. I really don't know how else to describe this utterly soulless song. Unconditional 1 and 2 don't really do much to improve on things. With the addition of these grating wind chime parts and jumpy beats, it really solidifies this as just like another stomp, clap, hey album. And I don't even know how Peter Gabriel got roped into this mess on Unconditional 2. I mean, these lyrics are just bad. There's absolutely nothing here that doesn't desperately scream, hey, check us out, we have thoughtful, pointed lyrics that are relevant to today's struggles. And there is ways to tackle the topics that these songs barely pretend to have any kind of like an understanding of, but it's really not like this. At the very least, this song does have one of the better beats on the album, but it's still a pretty plain synth-heavy track that doesn't really go anywhere, because honestly, it would be incredibly shocking if this album tried to do anything too different this far into the track listing. I think the tragic thing about this album is clearly that these guys can perform really really well and can put together some, songs. Really fucking boring songs and mediocre tracks, sure, but songs. This album is just lazy, and it wants so badly to have a message that it doesn't earn or deserve, but it just inspires no thought instead. To me, the worst offender is the final track, the title track, We, and I don't even know really what to say about this track. It's painfully average to a fault. I mean, it very simply, it doesn't sound like much effort was put into it. It's like a love song that feels completely fabricated. I don't know how you could possibly deliver such a passionless performance and think that it would be good, and not only as the final track on the album, but the fucking title track too. I really wish I had more positive things to say about this album, but between the really predictable writing and bland narrative, this one really just isn't doing anything for me at all. We is a pretty solid 2. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the album in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe and check out my Reverb store. My Instagram and my Depop links to those are in the description below. Thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the flip side.